the IP, and of course how to pitch the idea and the product. We also had a grant-based scheme, and last year we decided to leave that grant scheme and to make some kind of sustainable financial instrument. So it was very hard to motivate the local government to put money in, let's say, risk investments. So I was really searching for a solution, and I came out with a convertible loan. So we started to give convertible loans up to 3 years, and already we had great success. So we had like 5 investments in convertible loans so far, and all of them had the great results. And also we boosted the other business angels to co-invest with us. So I think this is the great place to start.
Okay, perfect. This is very nice to hear. There are also other models or instruments in which proof of concept can be made
of course,
available.
The mentorship model is very important. Yeah. We test both of them. One to attract mentors that would like to become business angels, and we test the model. First, we test the model for paid mentors. And still, I don't know which one is the best.
Okay.
I might just add that in the case of Croatia, if I'm right, there is a very interesting model for financing in addition to yours, which is that there is crowdfunding taking off. And there's Fundabeam, which was launched in Zagreb via the Zagreb Stock Exchange, which has already started to fund a lot of very early stage companies. This is a model that's come out of the Baltics, and actually Croatia is the first attempt at introducing the model into this region, and I gather that it's now expanded to Serbia and to Northern Macedonia.
Thank you. So the possibilities for support or for access to finance are growing in the region. This is very positive in my view. I would like to give an opportunity to the audience, perhaps to ask questions.
I asked about the JRC scheme for proof of concept.
Okay, so this is a question for me. Fantastic. Yes, no problem. Unfortunately, this is a project that is financed by another part of the Commission, by DigiNear, and they're at the moment in a restricted tender procedure. So I'm not allowed to share too much information. But what I can say is that we are envisaging to have this scheme operational towards the end of this year, at latest very early next year. And it is meant to support universities and research organizations in the whole area of the Western Balkans. And the support activities will be very broad. The goal is really to kick off tech transfer, to increase tech transfer activity. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to say much more because it's
But it will be like a call for projects or call for project proposals, I don't know.
There will be opportunity for researchers and entrepreneurs to send applications, yes.
Thank you.
There is another question. Perhaps I can actually move around and give the microphone.
Hello, I would like to ask about the possibility, about the following problem, how can be passed this way. If somebody from Balkans have some really good idea, the big companies that can use that idea mostly don't accept it very friendly, because this is they say this is Mr. Stefan from Serbia or Rado from Bulgaria or whoever, and they see we need to see the working demo, but sometimes a working demo are very costly and there is no mechanism to to prove that. This is mostly not happened because if Hans from Germany or John from America or Toshimoto from Japan come to them, mostly they accept idea and begin to work, but by default it's considered that Radu from Romania, Ivan from Bulgaria or Stefan from Serbia can do that. I speaking from my personal observations and experience. And I wish to know, can we get some institutional or whatever measures in order to this disruption to be overwhelmed, to be bypassed, to be getting some extension, because this will be much more helpful than some other mechanism in order to support the inventions and technology that is invented in Balkans. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're not talking about access to finance, but access to attention, if I understood correctly. Anybody wants to take on this one? How can we make our region more credible, I guess, in terms of promoting our innovations?
Well, that's why we established the accelerating program. So also we partner with big companies, global companies, and then we use them as mentors. So they are introduced into the projects that are going through the program, and then we make the connection between the idea and the big company that could maybe acquire that startup, or maybe sell through their channels. I think that's the way, to attract big companies into the accelerating programs.
Just one thought. I think in many respects, what everybody should be trying to do also is, somebody's got an idea. I can't remember, Stefan from Serbia rang a bell somewhere, but Stefan from Serbia, he's trying to get an idea to be sort of gain interest in a big company. I think part of that is to build a relationship. And actually, interestingly, in our program, one component that we have is what we call these kind of strategic matching sessions. And that's when we're taking the early stage company and finding a good partner for them to go and start to have discussions with. Hopefully the fruits of that discussion is that the partner might realize that actually they might have to put a little bit of money in to actually get something to the design stage or whatever it is. And I think that nature of relationships, rather than having to deal with one or two very large companies, is hopefully to find somebody that's more matchable to the competencies and the scale of the company that's in discussion, the Stefan from Serbia.
Yeah, if I can add a bit, and I'll speak about Radu from Romania, because myself, I'm a Romanian too. So I think one of the issues is that also Radu from Romania has to understand how to sell an idea to an enterprise, because that's not as easy as it seems. I mean, it's the corporate mentality is very different from the researcher mentality. And this is a challenge even in developed countries. But then, of course, if you come from from the east, you have even more challenges. So I think it's also part of maybe of an effort for education, for perhaps getting some mentors that understand that process. I mean, we have people here in Romania that work with multinational corporations, and they know how those guys think, because just to give you an example, if you're in a big company, you're very much worried not to make mistakes. You make a big mistake, you're fired, right? So then why would you take a risk and do that invention from Romania when it's much easier to take the existing solution and survive until you get retired? Right, and you got to understand that you're dealing here with people. Is nobody there to help you. People, they just act in their self-interest. So that's my answer to your question.
Thank you. We have a question from Henrik, and then we'll come to.
Thank you for a very nice panel. I always try to look into the future, and we hear a lot about different mechanisms There's loans, there's grants, there's investments in the proof of concept range, so to say. And sometimes you give to universities, sometimes you only give to spin-offs, etc., etc. Is this the way it's supposed to be? Or are this just the early stages of some sort of development where we will stabilize the proof of concept, so to say, in the future? What do you think? What will it look like in 5 years, 10 years' time?
Anybody?
It's a nice question, and I think it will look like as we will create it. So we are the ones that will create the future. And what I do personally, I experiment a lot. So if I see the success story, then I repeat it.
I would answer it and say that I think if you're an early stage or a proof of concept stage company and you're shopping around for an investor here, you could wait 2 years to get an investment. In Silicon Valley, it takes about 2 weeks. That's going to change everything. So for me, the scalability is in the liquidity of funds that are available. And it's a whole plethora of fundings, whether it is traditional debt, which is probably a little bit tough to understand, some kind of mezzanine financing coming in the different formats, and then a really targeted equity. But I think that's really important. So I think in Romania we have probably 4 early stage funds. You can add 3 noughts, in one of the states in the United States.
Okay, just briefly. Well, regarding the proof of concept stage, I assume that this part of, let's say, the investment spectrum will still be dominated by grants, because it's early stage, it's very risky, and I think maybe it's because of the institution we're coming from. I think it's the role of the state to plant seeds for further investment, for the further stages of the investment, and I think it should be done consistently. So with no gaps in funding. So in that sense, I don't think that these sort of mechanisms will change dramatically. How to get to the money, and I agree here with the panel. I think this should be much faster, because currently we are still fighting with procedural issues.
Actually, I really like the question, because first of all, if, for example, that would happen, first I think I will be in shock for 6 months and not be aware that we have something that will be continuously coming. But what I think is that actually at this moment I don't know the right answer to your question, if there is a right question, because at this moment when we don't have this stabilized, we have, from my point of view, because I'm at university, we have researchers who are all the time complaining, we don't have money to do this, we cannot do that. So I would really like to see what will happen. Okay, now you have a continuously 5 years financing for your research. So now produce something. Because today, we also heard that researchers are under pressure, that they need to do something. Well, I agree and disagree, because from one point of view, I know that they are at one point busy with the research, some which are at universities with teaching, with classes, and yes, we need to find a way how to motivate them, how to reward them, actually how to evaluate their work. In Croatia is now in the process, new ideas about how to do that, so we will see what will happen. But I don't think that they are so much under pressure to do something. Exactly. So this is the thing. I would really like to have a 5-year period of continuously proof of concept or something like that, and then, okay, employ us at TTO, and we will find a way how to commercialize your research results.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is not just a question of money. I mean, it's also a question of skills, of cultural gaps sometimes, and then there, I think, having programs with mentors, having tech transfer funds, that will help, because you can finance research, but it may just stop there, right? They do the proof of concept and then they publish it and that's it, right? I mean, but you need to take it further to develop big companies out of that idea.
Thank you. We have another question.
Just 2 short comments. If you're from the Balkans, from experience, I know companies register if they believe in it in places like the UK and Ireland, and then they get a lot more respect. You have to be practical. 2, in Croatia, no scientists under pressure. They really should get fired a lot more. They all have permanent jobs. So, 3. Counting on the state is usually a bad idea anywhere in Europe, especially in the Balkans. Things are always slow, things always go wrong. So if you're really innovative, try to find some other solution. And so a question on this, actual question you mentioned, and this crowdfunding. Does it work well actually in Estonia? And can this be scaled up? Because this sounds like actually a good solution which bypasses a lot of crap we have in our countries. Yeah.
I'm not the guy who's looking after this, so but in Estonia it definitely took off, and what's very quickly clear is that a lot of regulation starts to come in, so then it starts to kind of lose its effectiveness. That's a generalization. In the case of Funderbeam, I think they are now through their 2nd or 3rd iteration. I think the key thing about it has been that what they focused on a lot is the screening of what the potential investees are looking like. And that's kind of given a lot of confidence. And there's quite a strong arrangement with the Zagreb Stock Exchange that has a strong strategic interest in seeing the development of SMEs and playing some role inside of that. And we've been helping them actually, because we're in fact a shareholder in the Zagreb Stock Exchange, and we've been driving that push to try and get into the SME space, and that's again pushed it. So it's not a real answer to you, but I know that Funderbeam as a program is now expanding into the Western Balkans, having successfully concluded a first round in Croatia. So yes, absolutely.
I'm also one of the shareholders of the Zagreb Stock Exchange, and I'm really looking into Funderbeam as a great model. But also there is one great issue. There is SPV, actually, that is, in Estonia, not in Croatia. So if you want to invest in Croatian company from Croatia, you need to put the money into Estonia. You know that?
But this is the same point that you're making earlier on. In the early stage space, if we start to get into a debate about where the company might move to, then I think we will never make any progress. I genuinely think that's, to me, a distraction to the point about it that if you start a company, the level of influence it has on everybody else's entrepreneurial flair and ambitions is by far and away the greatest advantage that you'll get out of it. I mean, in Egypt, of the 8 companies that are registered in our scaling up program, so these are companies with turnovers from $0 to $800,000, that's the range. 4 of them, 3 are registered in Holland, and 1 is registered in the British Virgin Islands. That is the nature of the beast. If you want to have a large scaling up operation that is really ambitious, that's what they're going to do from the get-go, unfortunately. And I think Funderbeam is the same thing. People want to put their money in a safe, regulated environment, perceived. Yeah, let's not get into the debate about whether Croatia is better than Estonia, but that's the point.
But also,
it's their marketing tool.
If I can add, I wear 2 hats. One is me, a physical person, that is also potential investor. And the other hat is that I run a public company, and that we have some goals. And that goals are to keep the companies in Croatia, to keep the IP rights in Croatia, and to keep the employment in Croatia. So you need, to put that somehow in balance.
You're in the European Union.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was going to say that I think if we are going to make a success out of these European programs, we all have to think as Europeans, because every country in the Union is way too small to produce unicorns. I mean, even Germany is too small, compared to US or China. So to me, that's sorry to say, but I think it's a wrong idea to think in terms of we need to keep the companies inside our borders, because then, you know, it's okay, yeah, the IP, yes, but then you need to have the IP rules. I think, you know, you can deal with that, right? I mean, you can still have money in Estonia and IP in Croatia. I think, you know, that's not impossible.
Maybe what you mean here is actually keep employment or create employment locally, which I believe is totally crucial. However, if you're set up in another country for jurisdiction purposes, some of these probably dynamics wouldn't make so much of an impact. But what is important is probably to keep a core R&D house in the country or to create some local employment.
Yes, but if
I would go slightly further than that, and I would say you're investing in an idea or a company. You don't want to put necessarily on the table the fact that you're investing in a country as well. The investor is there for the idea and the opportunity it offers globally, and that's what you're trying to create. And I think you have to really focus on that very hard. Otherwise, it really disperses the effort of what everybody's trying to do, I think.
Yep, but I don't know. I'm not sure, but I would argue that the state has the right to claim that the investment it made stays at least for a little while in the country. I was recently visiting some of the U.S. Funding organizations, so public funding organizations around Washington, D.C. So quite a rich area, and each one of them asks the companies to contractually to sign a contract in which they will state the intention to stay at least 2 years after the investment in the state, not in the U.S., but in the state from which they got funding. So if we are looking up to the U.S. and this is the state VCs, I mean, why would we be smarter than them? You know, I'm advocating now on behalf of the state.
It's extremely interesting debate, and I think that as often probably the answer is in the balance. Of course, if we're talking about publicly funded program to invest locally in innovation, in employment, etc., yes, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. If you want to attract private investment and global investment, you have to be way more flexible. So it's a balance in my view, and it's something that needs to be carefully considered if you want to grow a global company. But I think that Henrik has probably this will be a last comment because unfortunately we need to wrap up.
Apologies for all the questions and comments, but this time it's a comment. The way I see it, we have to regard the government as a business. A country is a business, and we're investing in the nation's welfare. It is, however, a much more complicated business than just return on investment to shareholders. But we definitely have to have that perspective as a part of the equation. But that may be that, for instance, in the Swedish situation, that it's good that Spotify actually is listed on the US stock market, because we simply don't have $35 billion possibility in Sweden, so it's completely ridiculous. We probably made enough money out of Spotify anyway. So I think it's a more complicated story, but government is business. And we as taxpayers in a country are the shareholders of that business.
That's a nice way to phrase it. I'm afraid we need to wrap up. I'm sure there will be more questions. It's been I would like to thank all of our panelists for the very interesting and exciting discussion we had today. Just very briefly, I think we learned about several ways to support financially, non-financially early stage companies. We learned about how crucial it is for tech transfer organizations, universities to be sustainable in the tech transfer activity, the importance of proof of concept as well as proof of capabilities. So with that, I think that I have personally as a homework to look into how we can support sectors beyond the IT and ICT sector where you might have more, let's say, complicated intellectual property involved or patents, etc., etc. This is something for the Commission also to go back with a little bit of a homework for our next meeting. And with that, I would like to conclude. Please let me thank all of our panelists. And I believe we will, Stoyan was here. Maybe you want to have a final message for the reception?
6:15 is the closing, 6:15.
Okay, so we have a closing just to the final session on the day, and shortly after you will be invited to join us at the drink reception. Thank you. Thank you.